they better think about having 5 to 10 million to start with initial investment.
It is really crazy, and I mean, on the note of the CBD and putting on, like, using it, the biggest thing is getting somebody to actually try it once, because once they try it once for something that it can actually deal with, I'm sure there's certain things that it can't deal with, but once they try it for something that it can actually deal with, they're amazed and they're like, oh my God, like, now I believe you. Like, before I thought it was just totally crazy and you were just blabbing off about whatever plant's gonna heal me, and I can walk into the woods and take a plant and eat it and I'll be saved. But it's like, it seems to really do that. I mean, there are so many things, and in terms of the bug bites, I mean, I'd say, I probably can't put this on products either, right? I mean, in terms of we can't make any medical claims, but the whole aspect of it reduces inflammation. That is like the biggest thing that it does. And I think that alone, like, I'm sure it does other things too, but that alone as a piece, inflammation is a cause for so many different ailments, so many different illnesses, that just that alone, like it's in some ways saying that, okay, CBD cures all these things or can treat all these things, can help with all these things. It branches it off into this whole idea of, oh, it's just it's snake oil, right? Because it can cure all these things. Whereas like they're used to a pharmacist maybe giving them a single pill for a single thing, right? And so they know they have that, even though that pill affects a bunch of other things too, right? But the relationship is, I'm getting this single pill for this to treat this single thing, and that's all it can do. And so to have that relationship where they like get that new product for, I've found by saying it helps with inflammation, and then that inflammation deals with lots of other things, right? The inflammation is causing lots of other things that are happening in your body, and just it dealing with the inflammation is kind of what gets people over that hurdle. And then once I get them to try it, it's just like, wow, now I believe you. And you aren't just a crazy person living in the woods just talking fairy tales.
And there's caveats to that too, right? I'll add a couple disclaimers out there for you, because what you're saying is absolutely right. But like, everybody, your weight is different. Your cannabinoid usage could affect that. Like, you don't, like, for instance, this is me a gut feel. I really believe CBD is like the Red Cross, going to be the Red Cross cannabinoid. I believe that's going to be the one for people, really, that's going to be the best for anti-inflammatory and specific needs that way. And CBD won't be the best for everything for everybody. But I don't know that yet, because we're still gaining this research, right? But I'm just going by what I've seen through product usage, right? Because prior to us starting our company, we actually reached out to 150 CBD companies and got samples and sampled them all internally. Like, we were CBD out some days.
Well, you didn't just sample them; you tested them. You did everything.
Everywhere,
I mean, like
every company. I don't want to start naming companies out, because some are not even around anymore and some are. But over 150 companies. We were no joke about this. We wanted to understand people's products, what was being put out, what was marketed, right? If what was being marketed was matching what we were feeling, right? And we were just a bunch of average guys testing these products out, and it really helped us understand what's right, what's wrong in the market, and what needs to happen. And that's why we've taken a lot of time taking products to the market and making sure that we understand that, okay, we want to make sure there's products specifically for people's needs. And that's what my business partners did with the whole vape industry. Some people don't agree with the vape industry, but at the end of the day, how many people has that got off of smoking? And that's the big, I mean, we sit here talking about COVID, and we're all sitting indoors for COVID for the last couple months, right? How about a couple of perspective things? In this amount of time, more people have died of cancer, heart disease, lung cancer, like so many other ailments, but yet we're not all sitting at home telling people not to smoke cigarettes. Like, liquor stores have been open through COVID, right? Yep. And people are dying of liver disease worse than COVID right now. I'm off my pulpit. I just want to say that, folks, I understand COVID and we have to watch out for it. It's infectious disease. We have to learn more about it. But at the end of the day, during this time of COVID, people have died of way more worse things in their lives than COVID, unfortunately. And I don't understand why there's not more of an emphasis put on smoking cigarettes. I mean, I think the last statistic I saw is 53% of people who touch a cigarette will die in some way, shape, or form of a smoke-related illness. Think about that. But I was also on a plane with someone who's in the health industry last year, and her and I were talking, and I was talking about my podcast, and I was just coming out with it, and she went to insurance companies within the health industry to make sure they're complying. So she's kind of that compliance person going to make sure they're doing all their dotting all their I's, dotting their T's, making sure nobody's getting no fraud. And I said it to her, and she was very matter of fact and middle-aged white woman, and she goes, "Oh yeah, most people don't realize that cannabis smoke is way different than cigarette smoke. It's not the same. People don't realize." And she said it so matter of factly that I knew that it was a norm within the industry to know that. You know what I mean? But yet we all don't know that it's different. So I used to always, I'm honest to a fault. My children in their 20s, they've known my usage of cannabis my whole life. I smoked before my first marathon to qualify for Boston, everybody. Yep, Rochester Marathon 2005, look me up. I finished 18th overall, and I qualified for Boston, and I was high for that race, folks. I'm not saying that to be proud. I'm saying that I was going through depression, through a divorce. I didn't want to run that race that morning. I woke up and I smoked some weed because I wanted to get out of my depression to get to that race that I've been training for. And I killed it. I not only raced it, I freaking killed it. I ran a 3:11:23 and qualified for Boston. And I'm proud of the fact that I did. And I'm proud of the fact that I also learned something about myself through doing it, that maybe this plant isn't necessarily a negative, and my one vice might actually, so my kids have always known that this is something I did. And I always told them there could be a time where my actual smoking of this plant could cause harm to me. And I've learned that you can have chronic bronchitis from inhaling. I've accepted that as a possible side effect of the obvious benefits of this plant. There are other ways of delivery methods, everything else, but you have to decide for yourself. So if it's a tincture that's oil-based, or if it's a gummy, or if it's lotion, if it's topical, a bath bomb, however you want to take it in, or what capacity, you just got to figure out your body's going to be different than Aiden's body. It's going to be different from Ken's body, than Barbie's body, than anybody else's body. You have to know that your body's going to be different based on how your lineage is. If you came through Germany, or you came through England, or you're a bunch of mixed races, and what you're eating and what you're drinking and taking in will all affect how this plant affects you. And that's what I've learned.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. And on that note of it affecting you differently, I think a lot of people maybe don't realize that exactly, right? They just see the milligrams of THC or milligrams of CBD, and then they don't realize, like, if you take THC, it's 11-hydroxy tetrahydrocannabinol is what it becomes, the 11-H-THC. And when you eat it take it orally and you eat it, and it digests in your stomach, and then it's far more potent. It's like 4 times more potent than the THC is. And so a lot of people they're not really aware of that, right? They maybe see the joint that has like 25% THC or whatever, and like they look at the gram. And so so it's just
that's a great point.
Knowledge base.
I'm a firm believer that the FDA needs to jump in on the CBD and the cannabinoids because of what you just said. They process differently versus smoking than eating. And that's why I believe that if you or I were both making brownies, there needs to be some kind of standardization to those brownies, right? Like, I'm a firm believer that they should get involved, but they need to do it with a lot of research. And I don't know how long that will take legitimately, right? Because we can all sit there and make batches of brownies with CBD or THC or any cannabis, right, Aiden? And you can get different varieties based on, you can decarboxylate for a certain amount of time, and you can have a cookie that's more of an energy cookie, and you can decarboxylate it longer, and you'll have one that maybe makes you a sleeper. How do you know that when you're going to a store to buy that cookie from that dispensary, right? Like, so I don't mean to interrupt you, but that's, I'm a firm believer that the FDA does need to be involved, that we need to make this a collaborative effort.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, to kind of touch on the research aspect and then also the FDA aspect, I think people are coming on board to it, and it's really an aspect of I think the hemp industry maturing, or the cannabis industry maturing. I mean, obviously marijuana has matured to an extent. It's still kind of immature in many ways, but let's say the hemp industry maturing, because like it's definitely a community, and there's definitely great people in the community, and we definitely want it to continue being a community because it's come in with open arms. But then there's also aspects that it needs to be matured, and we need to realize that regulation should be involved to some extent, right? We like, as you said, there's somebody can go into a gas station and they can see 10 different CBD products on the shelf, and they don't know what they're buying, right? And as you said, it's probably a tincture, and then that's also an aspect. That's a whole other thing, right? It's going sublingually versus going through your digestive tract, and so there's just, that's a whole other aspect. But they don't necessarily know what they're buying, right, in terms of quality standards, because there's so many quality standards that could possibly go wrong when you're manufacturing these products. And I mean, there's so many steps involved to get it from the plant to the actual bottle and on the shelf. And then also, I mean, as you had told with shared with me and some of the products that you guys had tested, the cannabinoid content either wasn't like actually what was on the label, or it would say 1,000 milligrams cannabinoids, but only 800 of those were actually CBD, and the other 200 are made up of all the other cannabinoids. And so it's like,
those are the products, some of the products we were testing, that's the stuff we were seeing. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And so we definitely need quality standards involved 100%. And then we also need to have food safety involved, right? I mean, people want to bring this into the food industry. Well, we bring it into the food industry. It's not like we're just going to be like, oh yeah, oh, that gets a specialty box. And I think that's an aspect that kind of comes out of the hemp industry. And I understand it, because it's this plant that's been treated so wrong. And yeah, it's like, it has so much value to it. And so I can understand that. And the movement has kind of all been about the plant, right? But now we do want to regulate it, and we do want to bring it into the industry, and we want it to be like part of the rest of the industries. And so to say that, oh, but it has to stay in its special box still, right? It has to stay in its own little special box, special category, 100%, like not integrated with the rest of the stuff. That's ridiculous, because it's going to be like just a nightmare to even try to get it through any sort of congressional or the House, or getting it approved by government of any sort. And then B, it's just going to be a lot more challenging to regulate and make sure that it actually works as an industry, and it functions as an industry, gets funding as an industry. Investors are actually willing to come in and spend money on it, because they're not like, oh, are you sure it's going to be illegal tomorrow? Like, is your product going to have to be taken off shelves, and we're going to lose millions of dollars? Like, because it's also not cheap, especially in cannabinoids. I mean, also in fiber and grain, but that's more on the processing side. The growing side is pretty cheap. But the like getting a product to market, I was a part of a CBD company a few years ago. I left it because I really just wanted to focus on materials. But one of the things I learned was like to really, I mean, even just like a processing company alone, not even talking going from growing, processing, and then selling the product, but even just the process, you need at least $2 million really to have on the books, ready to be invested, to even really consider expanding to a larger scale. I mean, I kind of look at it, to go off on a little tangent here, I kind of look at it like the maple syrup industry. We have the large scale maple syrup companies like from Vermont and Canada that are all over the country, right? And then you have these smaller local maple syrup companies that are in the little local stores. And that's how I kind of see the cannabinoid industry is going. You're going to have like boutique companies, right? And then you're going to have the larger scale companies. And knowing how to scale a product, like you can definitely make a product at maybe like, I don't know the exact scale, but like a small lab, right? You can make a decent amount of product, but then if you want to scale that up to the next level, there's a whole bunch of other components that come into play that are well beyond.
And as far as, yeah, and you're right in some ways, and then people have to decide what equipment they're at. So you talk about $2 million. Let's say someone wants to be extracted. That doesn't cover the extraction line. So what's $2 million for that startup going to do? That can't even pay for your extraction line, right? That's not paying for your equipment, your H1D1 that you need, building. So at that $2 million, you better hope you're just doing product creation and that you can source your distillate cheap, because you're not going to start with equipment with that amount of money. I would say right now, to be reasonable for people, they better think about having 5 to 10 million to start with initial investment in this industry. And that's because you're pretty much creating dietary supplements, right? So you're talking about pharmaceutical grade stuff. So you're talking about GMP certifications, and then maintain those certifications And then being able to, at that point, being any time New York State can come in your building, federal agencies come in your building, or GMP facility.
Check your books.
Right? Like,
Yeah.
or OSHA, right? So you got four then entities that you can walk in your building anytime and just shut you down if you're not doing something right. So, especially in New York State, I think it's all a good thing. It's just going to make the cost of doing business very high. Like, we're talking about tax rates right now. Jason Klemick put a nice package together for the state that they were looking at for taxation. But I think he was talking about if the percentages are above 31% or something, it's going to make it very challenging for companies to do business in New York State. And that's what they're talking about, a tax rate higher than that right now on rec marijuana companies. So, or rec THC companies, excuse me. I don't want to use the proper language, but so there's a lot of challenges here. Banks are still not giving money to CBD companies. It's not happening still. I know several companies here in New York State that still can't get funding. So I don't know where we're going that side of it, but if I know one of the things you mentioned was, what does it take for a startup? 5 to 10 million probably is pretty legitimate. And also, if you're looking to go into the rec THC game, you better have a $3 million bond. That means $3 million cash in a bank account sitting there. So that's going to stop a little of those mom and pops, unfortunately.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's definitely, yeah. Thank you for correcting on the numbers, because I mean, also it's still early in the game for sure. There's still going to be lots of changes that are going to occur, but it's also kind of late in the game too, right? I mean, you've got a lot of people jumping in, and the people that were prepared jumped in pretty early. And another thing that I kind of liked about what you guys were doing was you were starting to test some products in the market a little bit here and there, but you guys focused on getting your products like A+, and focused on getting a really good brand, focused on getting the infrastructure set up, and then you're releasing, right? Versus just like starting to sell a product, not really knowing if you're going to be able to get all the flower that you need to extract from and get high enough quality flower and get the whole supply chain in order. And so now, I mean, there's a bunch of people I know that are shipping from like unprepared, shipping from out of state or importing from out of state because they couldn't get quality flower in New York State because either they didn't have the right growers set up, or they just didn't really think ahead to how much they would need, or they just thought there'd be a constant stream of good flower coming in. And so there's
a bunch of tinctures or gummies sent out for a COA. The COA came back wrong, but all their packaging material was done already, and they got it all made. Now what are those companies doing?
Yeah.
Oh, we're going to put it to market and hope nobody tests our product. Like, unfortunately, that happened a lot out there, right? Because people didn't realize the challenges of making these products. I'm going to tell you right now, folks, when you talk about the pharmaceutical industry, they are putting their R&D costs into the cost of those pills. In the cannabis industry, we don't have that luxury, but I'm going to tell you right now, anybody creating products in the cannabis industry is putting a lot of money in R&D. Maybe not as much as pharmaceutical industry, but pretty close. And they're not putting the money into the cost of the products, just so you know, and I know that for certain because that's our company. We have put so much money into R&D for the last 2 years, and we are not putting any of that cost. We are making products and pricing them based on the cost of us making it, not on the cost of the last 2 years of our R&D, which if I told you the cost of R&D of the last 2 years, you'd be out of your mind. Seriously. Like, pharmaceutical industry should be shot for what they do.
Would the $1 to $2 million be more around the R&D budget, maybe of a product line, or if it's like a category product line?
Yeah, if you're talking about everything from extraction up, so you're talking about talking about all the different things. Less than that of product lines, obviously. I'm not going to sit here and embellish, but you're talking about a lot of money. I mean, and a lot of waste and a lot of notation and running batches and making sure. So us at our facility, we have what a lot of people don't have. We actually have an HPLC machine at our facility, so we can test potency before it goes out. And I don't know how many people are aware of this, but sample prep is a big issue in our industry across the country. So for those of you who don't know, if you are sample prepping for anything on the elementary table, for instance, you name something on the elementary table, a lab in New York State can call a lab in California, and they're sampling that item on the elementary table, lead, anything element on that table. They're sample prepping the same way in any lab across the country. That's part of the ISO certification for labs. So in the cannabis industry, We, for instance, our company has a gummy that nobody, it's very rare to find in the market. We're vegan based. There's no gelatin in it. And it is very difficult for us to make sure that we have sample prep properly because nobody understands, because we don't have a gummy that nobody else has. So you send it to a lab and they're sample prepping like a gelatin gummy, but yet you can't sample prep the same way of a gelatin based, animal based. By the way, gelatin is all animal products, folks. None of it's good for you.
Comes from the horse hooves, right? Or
Oh, thank
hooves
you.
in
Yes,
general.
cartilage. For all of you, anybody out there eating gelatin, worms, gummy worms, like, please look to see what you're eating, please. Please, because we don't make it with any of that stuff. Please look. Oh, anyways, so sample prep becomes an issue, right? So tinctures are pretty easy. It's oil based. You can get sample prep with labs, but you start talking about other products, lotions, balms, salves, bath bombs. Sample prep, you can't call one lab from California, New York, and they're sample prepping the same. So our industry is so far behind, we don't even have sample prep as a foundational element within our industry. How are we supposed to move forward making products, folks, if we can't even get labs that sample prep the same way, the same products?
Yeah, absolutely. And sample prep them for the consumer, but then also, that also applies to the fact of the actual cannabinoids coming in, or the cannabis coming into your extraction plant, getting that tested. And if that's tested, there's not even just the sample prep, the different testing styles, or the different testing methods, and also like
that you use to break down the matter. Like,
yeah.
I'm not a chemist, so I'm not going to sit here and play pretend right now. So I don't want to name some of them. I know several of them, but I don't want to sit here and name them. But for instance, if you have a lab that tests it one way every time, let's say someone goes to buy a product off your shelf and sends it to a different lab, they can sample prep it the same way and come up with a different cannabinoid number because they don't understand some of the basics. Maybe you have to really have a relationship with your lab. So someone, Monroe County could take one of your products, put it through their testing lab, and since they use a different type of agent, I'm not going to go through and look like an idiot, but a different type of agent, it could result in a different cannabinoid result. And that's the problem within the industry. So how, if you got federal agencies now testing differently than your lab that you're using and trusting as your third party, that you guys have worked together, and they're going to now tell you that's not right when you and your lab, you have plenty of records showing this is what we're doing correctly. It makes it very frustrating.
Incredibly frustrating. And then not even just in the lab, but then also in the field, somebody could either just taking a sample from a different place in the field, or taking a sample from a different place on the plant, different times of day, different times of the week. There's so much variation in that. And then having that like very arbitrary number of the 0.3% THC limit is like, nobody buys pot that's even 1% THC for pot's sake, right? They buying something far higher. And so like, it'd be really nice if you could at least get to that 1%, or even, as we've talked about in the past, take that off of the shoulders of the farmer and put it onto the shoulders of the processor, where the processor has the rights to handle THC. And if they want to, or they can sell it off to the recreational market, or they can sell it off to the medical marijuana market. Or if they want to, they can also put it as a percentage into their full spectrum oils, right? Or full spectrum products. And so
your full spectrum products can be a little bit, you dealing with hot oil, then you have more terpenes and cannabinoids to make a better quality full spectrum product out of that. And New York State is kind of handcuffing processors right now by saying they can't have over that 0.3 limit, because they don't realize yet, they haven't had the research yet in the state to know that in California, Denver, and Colorado, and Oregon, they've realized that handling this together actually makes good quality products to help people even better. The cannabinoids and terpenes are such a big piece of this, folks. This is not about CBD. This is not just about THC. This is about the actual terpenes. So terpenes, let me explain terpenes for you. You're going to get terpenes off an orange plant, off a strawberry plant. The smells, the texture, those are called terpenes, right? So, and they help, terpenes in your body help deliver. So if you're eating strawberries and you need the vitamins within the strawberry, so terpenes of that strawberry will help that deliver to your body. It's all part of the process. So the cannabinoid plant is the same way. If you strip everything from that cannabinoid plant just for CBD, you're going to get some benefits out of that CBD. But if you have those terpenes in there as well for that full spectrum effect, it really helps all our CBD1 and 2 receptors in our endocrine system, folks. Look it up. None of us are told about our endocrine system. Please look it up yourselves. Please learn about it, add it to your lives, because adding this cannabis plant and feeding that endocrine system is going to be what helps you avoid the cancers. Stop eating that processed foods. Stay away from your browns. Eat clean. That's the simplest way to say it.
Yeah, no, you definitely touched on the whole aspect of we're not taught about our endocrine or endocannabinoid system, ECS for short. And it's such a big part of our system. The more we discover, the more we're finding out that it's so major. And like, I talk to doctors and they're like, I don't know what that is. Like, maybe I've heard about it because of the cannabinoid industry, but that's about it. And so it's, yeah, having, because as we talked about a little bit earlier, the whole aspect of a pharmaceutical is they're saying it's targeting one specific thing, right? But it's affecting all these other things that are in the body. And the thing that just through anecdotal research and evidence, the thing that has almost been discovered is that like people are calling it the ensemble effect or entourage effect in other industries, in terms of like mixing all the different cannabinoids together because they interact with each other. Just as I said, like the researcher was finding that the CBD connecting to the CBD receptor made the receptor site different, so a different thing could bind into that. So like, and so there's just so many different mixtures and ratios, and then we really need to find out more about our endocannabinoid system or ECS to really understand these things, and also learn more about just the cannabinoids in general. But yeah, as you said, like the terpenes are also an incredibly important part, and yeah, it's literally everywhere you go. You walk out and you smell pine trees, you're smelling pinene, or I think in lemon it's limonene, and so like they not only
there's studies out there that if you live in a city, you are not as healthy as you are if you live in rural areas where you're taking hikes in the woods. And terpenes,
absolutely.
I mean, I love that you said that. Just rekindle that knowledge. But it really is about getting out and enjoying nature, being part of nature, right? Like,
thank you very much for joining us here on WhatCannaRadio. If you enjoyed what you heard and you'd like to hear more, please consider smashing that like button below and subscribing to our channel so you can be the first to know when we release new content. If you enjoyed the video so much that you'd like to watch another right this moment, check out our video right here. Or if you'd like to see what YouTube is offering to you, check out the videos over here or down below. Thank you very much for joining us and have yourselves a wonderful day.